Syphil is a gamer who just lost his max-level character during a huge war event he organized, but all of his friends had a lot of fun, so he has no regrets. His war was apparently so popular that he ended up receiving an offer from the dev team of the game, and since he's excited to see what they have in store for him, he clicks accept without a second thought. However, he probably should have read the terms and conditions because a moment later he finds himself in a strange room with tons of people staring at him. And to make matters worse, his family jewels were missing too. He realizes he has somehow been placed in the body of his character, Lufas, and the people seem absolutely terrified of him, so he attempts to politely ask them what's going on. However, as soon as Lufas's mouth opens, an immense pressure fills the room, and everyone inside is pushed face down to the floor. Outwardly, Lufas is condescendingly asking the group if they normally taste the floor whenever they meet someone new, but inside, Syphil is just freaking out because he has no idea why all this is happening. Just then, he remembers that Lufas has an intimidation skill that's probably causing all of this, so he tries to calm down and turn it off, but it takes a few minutes for him to figure it out, so the people have been stuck to the ground for a while. Once things finally go back to normal, Lufas walks up to one of the elves in the room and asks him for an explanation, to which he promptly faints out of fear, but she eventually gets the answers she's looking for. Long story short, 200 years have passed since she was sealed away and the demon lord is still alive, so in order to defeat him, the kingdom attempted to summon another hero, which is how Lufas ended up here. This means Syphil really was sucked into the game and he's honestly really excited about it, but he realizes it must be terrifying to be in his presence while he possesses Lufas' body, so he should probably leave soon before he gives someone a heart attack. Just then, Lufas speaks up and she tells everyone that she understands their concern regarding her presence since she kind of nearly took over the world at one point, but she assures them that her conquering days are over, so they don't have to worry. Although she also has no interest in becoming their new hero, so she says they can just forget about her and summon another one or something because she's not sticking around. The king asks her where she plans to go, so Lufas tells him that she's just going to spend some time appreciating this world for what it is, but she'd be willing to come back if the need arises. Lufas then takes off and Syphil somehow completely understands how Lufas' wings function, so he is able to use them without much issue. Lufas was Syphil's main when X-Gate originally launched, and thanks to the game's novel system, actions taken by gamers were officially added in as lore, so with all the time and money Syphil spent getting Lufas to the top of the leaderboards, she is generally recognized as one of the most terrifying characters in this world. He could have stayed at the top of the leaderboards forever if he wanted, but that would have been way too boring, so instead he made a deal with all the game's top players at the time and had everyone split into the light and dark factions so they could have an all-out war. The war in question resulted in Lufas being sealed away in a subspace after her defeat, and while it was a lot of fun for Syphil, for this world it was reality, so Lufas is almost universally feared here for what she did. Mind you, the entire time Syphil and his friends were enacting their little war, they completely ignored the game's main objective of slaying the demon lord, so Orm is still alive and has been that way since Lufas was sealed, but that's not anywhere near the top of her priority list, so she'll deal with it later. Right now, she just wants to experience the game world that has now become a reality. Lufas' first stop is her old Malfil base of operations, and it is truly an impressive sight. Granted, it's a little rough around the edges after 200 years of collecting dust, but it's still amazing to see it in person. Lufas takes a seat on the throne and Syphil starts thinking about all the good times he's had with his friends in this place. He recalls how they have fun chatting about a bunch of nonsense all the time, but that he realizes that those discussions were all in a group chat. So why does he remember it as though he were there in person? Just then, Lufas notices someone approaching, which puts her on edge since the base should be empty, but when she takes a look, it turns out to be a blue-haired girl named Dinah. She is really excited to see Lufas since she has been waiting 2 centuries for her return, but Lufas has no idea who this chick is. Dinah is incredibly hurt to realize that Lufas forgot about her even though she was her most loyal advisor, but Lufas doesn't remember ever having a use for an advisor in the first place. However, now that he thinks about it, Syphil recalls that when he was building this base, he thought it would be cool to have an NPC in the background to make the place feel more alive, so he placed Dinah and just kind of left her there. She must have gained consciousness when this world became reality, and Syphil feels kind of bad since she was stuck here by herself for 200 years, so Lufas plays along and says there's no way she forget about Dinah. She thanks Dinah for protecting the base while she was gone, and Dinah is incredibly grateful to hear such kind words from Lufas. But putting that aside, with all the time that has passed, Lufas is out of the loop on the current state of the world, so she asks Dinah for a quick history lesson to catch up with modern affairs. Dinah says she'd be more than happy to explain everything she knows. So she tells Lufus that after she was defeated, the 7 heroes went on to found their own separate nations. 4 of them have already died due to natural causes in the past 200 years, but the 3 with longer lifespans are still around. Lufus can't help but wonder whether the heroes in this world are really still his friends or if they became NPCs, so he plans to pay them a visit sooner or later. Next, Dina explains that the Demon King, Orm, is still alive, and that's mainly because the 7 heroes failed to defeat him after they sealed Lufus away. In other news, Dina says that Lufus's 12 heavenly stars are still around as well, though most have gone their separate ways. The 12 stars are a group of rare and powerful monster NPCs that Sephiel collected because he thought it would be cool to have a small army of elite generals serve under him. Lufus asks Dina if there are any updates on the 12 stars, and she says she knows the location of 6 of them, but 2 of those 6 seem to have joined the demon army in an attempt to get back at the heroes who sealed Lufus away. Lufus is a little disappointed to hear that some of her minions joined the demon army over her defeat since the beef was never that deep, so she's going to have to chew them out once she finds those 2. With that aside, she's glad that she at least has something to do now. Her initial plan was to just go around exploring the world for fun and find out whether the 3 remaining heroes are players like her or not. But first she needs to go round up the 12 heavenly stars because she'd be responsible if any of them went around causing trouble for no reason. She asks Dina to give her the location of the first heavenly star, so she pulls up a map and points to a place called Svel. This is where one of the heroes has been living for the past few years, and the heavenly star, Eris, has been trying to invade it for months now. Now that she knows where to find Eris, she immediately starts heading out to find him, but Dina yells for her to come back because she can't just leave without making preparations. First of all, Lufus has no money on her, and Dina would have been willing to give her some. Inflation's a pain, and she's been waiting so long that all the money she had is practically worthless now. Lufus says she can just earn some more money along the way, but Dina tells her no one is going to want to do business with the legendary conqueror. Lufus argues that there's no way anyone would recognize her face after 200 years, but she is reminded that races like elves exist, and a bunch of them are bound to know who she is, especially since the kingdom has probably issued a public warning of her arrival. However, if Lufus wants to earn money, then Dina knows of a job she can do that doesn't require a background check: adventuring. To get started, Dina leaves Lufus to the trade city of Ytterler, but she would draw too much attention with her dark wings exposed, so Lufus sticks them in her oversized cloak as a disguise. She hates how uncomfortable it is to walk around like this, but they don't really have much of a choice in this situation, so she'll just have to deal with it for now. Once they arrive at the Adventurers Guild, Lufus mentions that it feels nostalgic to be back in the den of misfits and degenerates since, according to her lore, she was an adventurer before she founded her dark nation. However, she soon realizes how weird it is that she feels a sense of nostalgia from this when it is technically her first time setting foot in the guild. Dina notices that Lufus seems lost in thought, so she asks her if something is wrong, but she just brushes it off and says they should go take a look at the job board. While they are searching the job board, Dina spots a job that pays 3,000 coins, and all they need to do is find a bunch of lost cats. Lufus agrees that it seems like a really good deal, but it'd take ages for them to actually find the cats, and she'd rather not spend a week on a side quest, so they keep looking. Just then, they find a nice hunting job that'll pay them 1,500 coins, and all they need to do is hunt a few orcs, so Lufus thinks it's perfect. Orcs have a 3% chance of dropping their meat upon death, and if you eat their meat, then your max health gets a boost, so she's going to do a little HP farming while they're out there. Later that day, the two arrive at the village where the request was made, and they speak to the village chief, a tired old man who just wants to end things once and for all. He explains that the orcs have been ravaging their village for a long time now, kidnapping their women, killing their men, and destroying everything they've built. He begs the two to get rid of them for the sake of this village, and Dina cheerfully assures him that he doesn't have to worry because Lufus will wipe those orcs out without a doubt, and he is really grateful for their help. With that said, they head out into the forest to track down the orc den, and before long they manage to find it with 2 orcs posted out front as lookouts, so Lufus starts getting ready to attack. Come to think of it, she hasn't actually checked her stat screen since she got here, so she pulls it up, and fortunately, she still has all her max level abilities, so killing the orcs shouldn't be difficult. But she's not sure if she's mentally prepared for it, since killing these things on screen is completely different from killing them in real life. She activates one of her abilities and creates a dozen swords at her side before launching them straight at the orcs, and the resulting mess is absolutely disgusting, but for some reason, Lufus feels oddly calm about it. Moments later, the orc nest is alerted to the presence of an intruder, so they all rush out and surround Lufus within a few moments. They also have a really big orc as their leader, so any normal adventurer would be in trouble, but when they begin their attack to Lufus, they are all so slow that they look like they are barely moving. The difference is so great that she realizes that she probably won't even need to create any more swords to handle them, so she takes off and starts chopping the heads off the orcs at top speed. She's so fast that the orc leader has no idea what's going on. All he sees is the heads of his men flying off their bodies. She then stops and looks at the big guy just to say, "Hey, I just wiped out your entire squad. What are you gonna do about it?" It goes on a rampage trying to smash her into the ground. But it's way out of its league because Lufus is practically a walking calamity and he is just an obstacle in her way. No joke, all she did to the Orc King was slowly fist bump his head, and a second later, a gaping hole was punched through its head. So she's just way too strong. After Lufus is done with her massacre, Dina begins harvesting some of the orc corpses, and she is delighted to find out that this one still has its tenderloin intact. According to Dina, the vitality of an orc is stored in their tenderloin, and if it is undamaged, eating it transfers that vitality to the user. She offers to prepare some for Lufus once they get back, so she creates a bunch of portals and stores the corpses away. Lufus had no idea that Dina had ability like this, but having teleportation will definitely come in handy eventually. But for now, it's time for them to rescue all the people who were kidnapped by the orcs. To Dina's surprise, after getting all the women out, she finds out that they all seem to be in perfect health. Lufus doesn't think it's all that strange since in the game's lore, orcs are actually really nice to ladies. They're just really ugly and have incredibly low charisma stats, so they don't even bother trying to riz anyone up and skip straight to kidnapping. Dina is shocked to hear this since she can't imagine such hideous monsters being gentlemen, but regardless of how they treated their captives, it doesn't change the fact that they still kidnapped the women in the first place. So Lufus creates a giant rock fist and smashes the cave to make sure there are no survivors. Dina asks Lufus if she would like her to erase the memories of the girls, since she would want them to have to recall the ugly faces of the orcs that kidnapped them. But Lufus' genuine reaction is, "Why did you just casually suggest memory wiping like it's a normal thing to do?" She asks Dina if it's really possible for her to wipe someone's memories, and she responds saying it's really easy. In fact, if she wanted, she could manipulate and overwrite a person's personality, but aside from how creepy it is that Dina is just able to do that on a whim, Lufus doesn't think it's necessary to alter anyone's memories over an incident like this. They just need to get the girls back to their village safely, so Lufus summons a golem and has it carry everyone on the journey back. Things turned out really well for this mission, but Lufus can't help but wonder why no one else accepted it before they came along. Dina explains that it's because there was no incentive to take the risk, but that makes no sense to her since the orc tenderloin vitality alone would have been more than enough reason to take on the challenge. However, Dina informs Lufus that most people wouldn't take on the risk because, to put it simply, the warriors of this era suck. For instance, Dina says the nation that summoned Lufus is called the Sword Kingdom, and she wants her to guess what level the kingdom's strongest swordsman is. Since it'd be their strongest fighter, Lufus assumes the dude must be just as strong as she is, but to her utter shock, she is told that the kingdom's best swordsman is only level 120. This makes no sense since she knows for a fact that there were tons of people who reached level 1000 alongside her in the game, but Dina reminds her that those were all people from the previous era, and quite frankly, they were the sweatiest of sweats. Realistically, to attain level 1000, one would need to fight constantly, every second of every day, and devote their entire life to getting stronger. And the people of this generation simply can't do that. At least not without dying in the process. Lufus now understands why it'd be difficult for the people of this world to hit the level cap, since to her this was just a game, so it was natural to grind as many levels as possible. But to the people of this world, this is their one and only life, so they wouldn't want to waste it. Lufus and Dina eventually make it back to the village, and the villagers are all so happy to be reunited with one another. The women are all incredibly grateful to Lufus for bringing them home, and Lufus is glad to see them all so happy. But if they knew her true identity, they might not be so cheerful right now. The village chief presents Lufus and Dina with the agreed upon reward, and after checking, Dina confirms that it's all in there, so they are ready to leave. However, before they go, the chief asks Lufus if it is really okay for the village to keep her golem. Lufus says she doesn't really mind leaving it behind, so they should just use it as a guardian to protect the village in case more orcs show up someday. The chief is so touched by Lufus' kindness that he assumes that she must be a messenger of God, but that's nowhere near the truth. Lufus decides it's time to leave, but before she does, the villagers ask her to at least tell them her name so they know what to call their savior. Without thinking, Lufus attempts to reveal her identity, but Dina steps in and gives the villagers a fake identity instead. Lufus is pissed that Dina cut her off like that, but they've been over this already. If anyone were to find out Lufus' true identity, then it'd cause mass panic, and they can't have that. Since they've acquired enough money to cover their travel expenses now, there's nothing stopping them from heading straight for Svull. But Lufus can't be too happy about it since the only reason they are going there is to stop one of her 12 stars, Ares, from continuing to attack it. She also needs to confirm whether the surviving heroes are truly her former companions or not, so her first stop will be to meet with Megrez. As they approach the city, Lufus begins to notice several pretty lights floating all around them, so she asks Dina what they are, and it is explained that those lights are little specks of mana floating around because the land here is so rich. She says it's proof that they are getting close to the nation of Skull, and in fact, Dina can already see it from here. She seems really excited to be here, but Lufus doesn't see what's so great about it since it just looks like a regular water town to her. They head down to the front gate, and there a guard yells out that anyone seeking entry into Skull needs to have their passport ready. Lufus had no idea they would need a passport to get into the city, so she starts worrying that they might not be able to get in. However, Dina isn't concerned at all because she has the perfect skill for this: document forgery. She simply walks up to the guard and presents 2 passports that she created for herself and Lufus, and after checking them, the guard is convinced that they must be real, so he allows the 2 to enter the city. As they walk through the streets, Dina explains to Lufus that the city of Svel was founded by the wise elf, Megrez, and it is well known for the wealth of magical knowledge it possesses. This area is also particularly rich in ambient mana, so several mages and scholars come here in hopes of furthering their knowledge of magecraft. Dina asks what their objective in the city is for today, so Lufus tells her that first, she plans to pay Megrez a visit since there are a lot of things she'd like to talk to him about. Dina freaks out upon hearing this because she thinks Lufus intends to storm Megrez's castle, but she assures her that this is just going to be a peaceful visit. After all, Ares has been causing Megrez a lot of unwarranted trouble, so she still needs to apologize to him for that. But before that, Lufus says she'd like to head to a library since there's still a lot about this world's history that she doesn't know. They start asking around for directions to the nearest library until they end up meeting a man named Grants. You can tell that Lufus and Dina must be new in town because practically everyone knows that all the libraries are located in the eastern section, but he's got some free time on his hands, so he offers to lead the way. Dina thanks him and introduces herself as a traveling merchant with Lufus as her suspicious employee, but Lufus stomps on her foot mid-sentence to get her to shut up because who the hell introduces their companion as suspicious? Grants can definitely tell that Lufus looks suspicious, but he doesn't intend to hold it against her since he's sure she must have her reasons, and Lufus is grateful for his understanding. As Grants guides them through the city, Dina comments on how lively everyone here is, and Grants agrees that the people here certainly are cheerful. But since the city has been under attack from Ares for the past several years, most people don't end up settling down here. Lufus' expression soars a little since she realizes the situation here is kind of her fault, and Grants notices this, but he assumes she must just be uneasy about the threat of being attacked by Ares while here, so he assures her that there's no need to worry because the city's defense system is impenetrable. He explains that the entire lake around the city is actually a golem created by Megrez, and every time Ares is attacked so far, he has been repelled by the city's guardian golem. Lufus scans the lake and discovers that it is indeed a golem, and while level 500 doesn't seem all that impressive to her, the million points of HP it has is definitely an incredible stat, so if Megrez was able to create something like this, then he must be really skilled. Grants then directs Lufus and Dina to the city's monorail and tells them that this will get them to the eastern section in no time. Dina and Lufus will have to continue alone from here, so they thank him for all his help, and he wishes them luck with their library visit. As Grants is walking away, Lufus takes a quick look at his stat sheet, and he turns out to be level 82. That's technically really low, but by the standards of the fighters of this era, Grants is one of the strongest. Dina asks Lufus to come along so they can get on the monorail, and now that she thinks about it, she doesn't recall ever seeing monorails in the original game. Once they arrive at the library, Lufus heads straight for the history section so she can find out what happened in the 200 years she was sealed away, but as she is searching the shelves, she finds a few books that seem pretty unusual. For instance, these 3 talk about how the 7 heroes were idiots for sealing Lufus away, and she thinks it's strange that the library is allowed to have books like this when the city is run by Megrez, one of the 7 heroes. Dina reminds Lufus that Megrez didn't establish a dictatorship or anything, so the people are free to say whatever they want about him. And it's not so much that they dislike the 7 heroes, but rather the people don't actually think Lufus was evil in the first place. While people were certainly terrified of her at the time, over the past 200 years that fear has been forgotten, and some people started to realize that Lufus' rule wasn't actually that bad. According to one of the history books, Lufus was a mysterious Blackwing that showed up out of nowhere and united the world under her rule in the blink of an eye 200 years ago. Though she was strict, she was not a tyrant. So many were actually better off under her rule, but humanity ended up rejecting her reign and sealed her away to take back their autonomy. This by itself wouldn't have been an issue, but the only thing keeping the demons at bay that entire time was the threat of Lufa's and her 12 stars. So once she was sealed away, the demon army took advantage of the situation and rose to destroy humanity. Naturally, the heroes tried to stop them, but their power fell short and they ended up being defeated. Since then, a lot of the land belonging to humanity has slowly been taken over by the demons, and now they are on the verge of being wiped out altogether. Lufa starts internally freaking out after hearing that because she had no idea the world was on the verge of destruction. That war she started was just meant to be a fun event between players, but no one warned her that her decision would plunge the world into such a dire situation. The library trip has helped Lufa realize what she needs to do, so she tells Dina that they need to go find Ares immediately. However, moments later, the entire city begins to rock as a massive earthquake shakes the foundation. An alarm is immediately raised, and all mercenaries available are called to the borders to prepare for an imminent attack. Lufa looks at the resulting damage and asks Dina if it is normal for a city like this to experience earthquakes of this magnitude. As far as Dina knows, this almost never happens, so Lufa concludes that this must be a result of one of Ares' skills, and he must be on his way right now to launch a full-scale attack. There's no time to waste, so Lufa creates a glider and tells Dina to get on immediately. As they are flying towards the chaos, Lufa puts some thought into the situation, and none of this makes sense to her. She knows Ares was always such a harmless sheep monster, and that it's not in his character to invade a nation like this repeatedly, so she wonders if this is really just because she was sealed away. And on another note, she wonders why she even has memories of Ares in the first place, since she never actually interacted with him in the game, but her main concern right now is to stop him, so she can worry about her memories later. When Ares was a little lamb, he was roaming through the forest on his own when he happened to run into Lufa. She was surprised to see a rainbow sheep out here, since it's a legendary monster that's said to only be born once every 500 years, but as she approached it, it recoiled in fear and began crying. Lufa noticed its tears, and if she had to guess, the sheep had likely been on the run since birth, hiding from both monster and humans alike, since a single thread of its wool is more valuable than gold. She won't deny that he has a good reason to cry, but she asks him what point there is in shedding all those tears. She tells him that if he is upset about his situation, then he had better be ready to strike back against those who would come after him. Otherwise, he had better prepare to live the rest of his life drenched in sorrow. The sheep took her words to heart and attacked Lufa to show its determination to grow stronger. And she liked its fighting spirit, so she put the sheep down and asked it to come with her. She told him that she wasn't at full strength yet, but she would one day conquer the entire world, and she wanted him to become her first companion. She asked it if it had a name yet, and the sheep shook its head, telling her no, so Lufa looked to the stars before coming up with the name Ares. At least that's how the story went. At present, Gantz and his men are all running out to intercept Ares' forces, because this is clearly the beginning of an all-out assault. Once he arrives on the front lines, he sees a massive army of monsters slowly marching towards the city's gates, and he's starting to worry because there's no way he will be able to hold off this many until the main army is ready for battle. The earthquake earlier must have been Ares' declaration of war, since regardless of his hatred for them, Lufa made a rule saying he isn't allowed to attack without making a declaration first, and ever since, he has followed that rule religiously. Before long, the city's advance force arrives, so the order is given for all the mages and archers to fire before the monsters get too close. After wheeling down the monster, the soldiers begin their charge because they need to keep the monsters at bay until the main force arrives. Gantz is out in front and begins mowing down monsters left and right, but while he may be doing alright, his subordinates aren't as strong as he is, so a lot of them are being slaughtered. At this rate, Gantz doesn't think they'll be able to hold out much longer. However, just as the troops were about to be overrun, countless ice spikes came raining down from the sky, and as the soldiers looked back towards the city, they saw Megrez and Livia, the water golem. They are all relieved that their guardian deity has arrived, and Megrez tells them they can all stand back now because Livia will handle the rest. He then gives Livia the order to attack, and within moments, dozens of monster forces are annihilated in one go. Meanwhile, Lufa has been watching the battle unfold from a distance, and she had planned to step in if the situation became dire, but with Livia and Megrez on the scene, it doesn't look like her help will be needed after all. Speaking of Megrez, Lufa decides to check his stats to see if they are still as good as they were when she and Megrez played together, but to her surprise, he's only level 500 now, and he is afflicted with a debuff called the Curse of the Vanquished. Lufa has never heard of a curse like that before, so she asks Dina if she has any idea what it is, and according to rumors she had heard, after the heroes failed to defeat the Demon Lord, they were all hit with a curse that sealed away half of their power, which is why Megrez is so much weaker than he used to be. And now that Dina thinks about it, if Megrez can't use his full power anymore, then that means he can't create any more golems like Livia, so if she goes down, then the city will truly be doomed. All of a sudden, the ground begins to shake as a giant monster approaches from the mountainside, and it is none other than Ares. After a brief standoff, Ares and Livia clash, and since Ares' element is fire, Megrez thinks Livia should have the upper hand in a direct confrontation. Livia uses a water spiral attack, forcing Ares to back off initially, but he comes charging back in with a massive fireball shortly after. At first, it looks like the fireball missed Livia altogether, but Ares was never aiming for her in the first place. His real target was Megrez all along, but fortunately, just before the fireball could hit him, Livia managed to step in and extinguish the blast. Megrez then sends Livia out as a tidal wave to push Ares back, but he uses a flame hop skill to jump over her and begins heading straight for Megrez. Megrez puts up a barrier to defend himself, but since he is only half as strong as he used to be, Ares eventually manages to overwhelm him and crack the shield. However, before he could break through, Livia snuck up behind Ares and put him in a chokehold. The soldiers begin cheering Livia on to put an end to this, and Dina asks Lufus how she thinks this is going to end. As far as this battle goes, Lufus says Livia will win, but that doesn't mean she will win the war. A lot of Livia's HP has been drained from tanking all of Ares' attacks, and it's likely that this was Ares' goal from the very beginning. He knew he wouldn't be able to beat Livia in a one-on-one battle, so he planned to whittle her health down with constant attacks and retreat so he can attack again in the future. Lufus is impressed that Ares was able to think logically enough to figure out that Livia can't pursue him once he retreats, so a constant barrage of periodic invasions would guarantee his eventual victory. However, Lufus can't let his plan go any further than this since it would be dangerous if he actually destroyed Livia, so she will have to deal with him herself. She grabs Dina and jumps down onto the battlefield. And just as Ares is about to launch another powerful blast, Lufus kicks him across the mountain range. Everyone is in utter disbelief when they see the terrifying monster sent flying in an instant, and Megrez is left wondering who on earth could possess such power. But even though Lufus is still concealing her identity, as soon as he hears the way she speaks, he kind of figures it out. Lufus doesn't want to confirm or deny anything yet, so she tells Megrez that she will handle Ares on her own, and afterwards, she will be back to have a discussion with him. However, before she leaves, Megrez tells her that there's someone behind the scenes manipulating Ares' thirst for revenge, so she should be careful. The warning is coming from an old friend, so Lufus says she'll keep it in mind, and then she flies off to confront Ares. Once she arrives in front of him, Ares asks who she is, and this comes as a surprise since when she played the game, Ares only ever made sheep noises, so she had no idea that he could actually speak. That aside, since Ares doesn't seem to recognize her, she activates her intimidation skill, and as soon as Ares feels the terrifying pressure coming off her, he is reminded of his master. However, even though she's standing right in front of him, Ares still refuses to believe it's her because he is sure Lufus died a long time ago. Lufus still isn't sure whether she counts as the original since she was technically reincarnated, but regardless, this is definitely the body of Lufus Mathal. She doesn't want to waste time trying to convince Ares with words, so she tells him that if he truly does not believe that it's her, then he is free to come test her strength for himself. And as an added courtesy, she promises not to hurt him too much. Ares hesitates for a moment because the woman in front of him really does look like Lufus, but he convinces himself that she must be a fake because there's no way his master could have returned. He prepares to attack with his full power, and Lufus is starting to get excited since this is the first time she has gotten to go up against a monster that should be strong enough to survive her attacks, so this will be her first real fight. Ares charges at Lufus with full intensity, however. After pushing her back for a few hundred meters, Lufus easily stops his momentum with one hand and tells him that he has indeed grown stronger than he was 200 years ago. Ares continuously attempts to push her back, but Lufus isn't budging one bit, and she even calls him adorable for trying so hard. As a reward for his effort, she says she will give him a hug, and in the next second, Ares is being lifted off the ground by his head. Lufus then throws him straight into the air, but she's still far from done, so she flies off after him. And once she gets above Ares' body, she says she is going to lightly pet him. Lufus then proceeds to punch Ares with the force of a 10-ton truck, sending him crashing down to the ground. But before he lands, she flies beneath him and decides to pet his chin as well, so Ares is sent back into the air. The people watch the spectacle unfold in stunned silence because they've never seen such an overwhelming display of power before. Lufus finally slams Ares into the ground, leaving him looking like Yamcha, but he still isn't done yet. Ares begins to burn with brilliant blue flames, and Lufus assumes this must be his strongest attack, so she tells him to come at her with everything he has. He charges forward with incredible speed, and with a huge smile on her face, Lufus moves forward to intercept him, resulting in a massive explosion that can be seen for miles. By the time the dust settles, we see that Lufus has once again stopped Ares with the palm of her hand, and she then proceeds to finger flick him into the rocks. She asks Ares if he still doubts that she is the real Lufus, but all of a sudden he jumps out of the rubble and changes into his human form to apologize to Lufus for his foolish behavior. Lufus is shocked at first because she knew Ares had a human form, but she doesn't remember designing him to be a femboy. But now that he thinks about it, he recalls a group chat where he and his friends decided to give Ares a femboy design as a joke, and he chose to go along with it. 20 minutes later, Ares finally stops crying and apologizing, so Lufus takes a look at his stat screen, and his level is still the same as it was back when Lufus played the game, but his abilities have improved by quite a bit. And that must have been the result of all of Ares' hard work over the past 200 years. She tells Ares that she is on a mission to reclaim her 12 heavenly stars, and he is her first stop, so she won't be taking no for an answer. Ares is glad that Lufus came to get him first, and he agrees to join her on her mission once more, but he does have a few questions first. Like, who is that blue-haired woman back there? Dina can't believe that Ares really doesn't remember her, so she runs up to him, stares him in the eyes, and reminds him that she has been by Lufus' side the entire time. All of a sudden, Ares recalls fuzzy memories of Dina standing next to Lufus' throne, but considering the fact that she has memory-altering powers, I'm starting to get a little suspicious. From what Ares remembers, Dina literally never moved from that spot, so he assumed she was a piece of furniture, but he's surprised to find out that she can talk. Hearing Ares call her a piece of furniture makes Dina really upset, so she goes over to one side and starts sulking over it. Lufus chuckles a little because she also has no idea who Dina was at first, but she has been of great help since Lufus got here, so she asks Ares not to make fun of her too much. This was the end of episode 3. Subscribe to not miss the next part.